and then ba léegi dañ soxla a new constitution because ñu bëri jàpp nañ ne this 1997 constitution nekkul constitution boo xam ne dañ ko war a use ci réew moo xam ne dafay wax ne démocratie lay kiiwee pour ko réewoo yow ban gis-gis nga ci am and then the question is who is to be blamed because ku ci nekk mu ngi am ku muy blame because am na ñoo xam ne they don't trust this current government because def nañ leen ko defati leen ko am na ñoo xam ne dañ ne lii revenge la because am na ñu waxoon ne suy ñëw rek dañ koo sànniwaat so yow noo ko jàngatee as a citizen ngeen bokkoon ci tam ñu doon bëgg pour ñu amee constitution bu bees finally amuñ ko mais bi dañuy struggle wala liggéeyaat pour mën ko am kenn kañ lañ ko am so yow ban jàngat nga ci am.
jërëjëf Mohamed may nuyu honorable lu ma bëgg a wax first moo ne we want a constitution but we must define the constitution we want. And I will give a bit of a context, but I know what. Man, so malache who wins, like it was written on the flyer, who wins or who loses.
Yes.
It's only one person who loses here. That is President Adama Barrow. What did he lose or lost? First, public trust for promising a constitution and failed to deliver. What did he lost? Integrity for saying things he cannot stick about. If you ask me who lost, is President Barrow, and what did he lose is credibility. And then man standing by his words in 2016. One of the fundamental campaign messages was to rebuild our legal frameworks because dictatorship is only empowered through the legal framework. Whatever we do, those who were beaten, those who were killed, those who were sent on exile, all bunched together is because the 1997 constitution was tampered, was butchered, was tailored as a monopolized document to empower one individual. That's the president. But this is not a debate about who wins or who loses, Mohammed. What can be fungwara neka moi? What is at stake for not having a constitution after 8 years of human resources, of financial resources, of everything Gambians did to set our path into a new dispensation through our democratization process. And the fundamental to that is to ensure we have a legal framework that doesn't just protect human rights, but also set on a path for accountability, for transparency, and for development. And in 2020, we had a constitution. And Mr. Damfa made mention of something that is very important. There is no perfect constitution. Even the American constitution is not perfect. But there is always a consensus on a progressive constitution. The constitutional building process is not absolute. It's not an event, it's a process. And one of the fundamental of building a law is legitimacy. And when we talk about legitimacy, it's not just from the legal standing, but also from the moral standing. There is legitimacy in the voice and aspiration of the citizens. Loi bi si waxe li la rew mi wala doxé nguur bi dafa wara déglu rew mi mo nekk doomi rew mi ak ñu bëgg ak seen kaddu noonu moo dee doxal rew mi. The 2020 draft may not be a perfect constitution. I agree with Mr. Damfa. We have a lot of controversies, even though some of the controversies are just misinformation and misinterpretation, such as the secularism clause or the word secular state. You know? And then, but I can tell you for free, Mohammed, Swing 2020 draft day was not killed at the parliament because we had a misinterpretation of the secular state saga, or we had the language of the marriage clause. No, we had it kicked out because the state, the president, the cabinet felt that the accountability mechanisms put in that constitution are too much to bear. That's the truth. It was not pulled out because we have the citizenship clause has controversy. It was not pulled out because the marriage clause has controversy. It was not pulled out because the imams and then the church were debating over secular state. No, it was pulled out because chapter 5, it was pulled out because of the president's powers to appoint and fire. It was pulled out because A, B, and C were not in favor of the president. And then that gives us the context of why we wanted to change the 1997 Constitution. If we want to maintain all of those powers and monopoly and power concentration on the president, we go ahead with the 1997 Constitution. Because what Jammeh did was simply to look at clauses that give him so much power, that give him monopoly over governance, that give him a concentrated power to do what he wants to do without check and balances, without accountability, without transparency. And that is why when he left, we said the first point of call is to rebuild our legal framework. And this is what the 2020 draft did. We have our boss, myself, Honorable. Everybody will have a vote on a constitution that we built. But that constitution was a consensus, and it was the most consultative constitution for Gambians home and abroad. You ever talk? You know, lilem buga fi, lilem bugut, lilem wara def, ak lilem nyaka def. I agree that man suma bopa my bone of contention with the 2020 draft was after it was drafted, probably it could have gone back to the people for a post-consultation. I agree to that. But that constitution was what the people wanted. That's why I call it the people's constitution. If you hold my debate, all the Lola Dewa. Who kept it out? Mr. Damfawa Nako is the 5th legislature. But people, si dekabi, am den bot, den de dega. Ne, constitution bi National Assembly ñoo ko kick out. But ku nekk si assembly bi 22nd September if the date is right. Ku toogoon foofu si chambers bi di déglu National Assembly members yi. Wax ma benn National Assembly member bu ma wane because of the marriage clause loolu moo tax moom supported constitution boobu dégguma ko. The first point of contention is the term limit and the retroactive nature clause of the term limit. Ne, the president term cannot be counted from behind. That is negotiable. We could talk over that. A National Assembly member said the powers given to the National Assembly override the powers given to the president, and the president will have more powers. That's why he rejected. That was the line of debate. Just like we will come to the 2024 draft, the line of debate. But also, after all, they kicked the constitution out simply because the president doesn't want the constitution. We have seen the reaction of the president when the draft was handed over to the cabinet. We have seen what they flagged. We have seen the conversations within the cabinet, within the president cabal. We have seen them. They did not flag the marriage clause. They flagged, the first thing was, and then the AG debated this to say that the chapter 5, integrity, is an entrenched clause, and an accountability clause cannot be entrenched. I am not a legal minded, but entrenched means untouchable, meaning that is a binding clause to ensure that it's not touchable and it continues to exist to make sure accountability is ensured. That's what he said. So we had the constitution killed. And the other reason why I would say that the president have a hand in it, after the constitution was killed, the president did not come out immediately to address the nation, to say what his stand was, to say whether he was in line with the National Assembly or not. The constitution went dead. 4 years down the line, we woke up one morning and we had ñu dégg ne cabinet bi moo nekk nguur bi moo nekk président bi ak ministre bi dañ jël constitution bi moo nekk 2020 draft bi ñu edit ko pour réintroduce ko because ñu ne constitution bi buñ reject soo rejecté constitution si parlement bi doo ko mën a return back doo ko dee mën a isaat in its form. When that happened, that is okay. I don't know the legal basis around that, but that is very justifiable. But the cabinet hamunne, there are a lot of issues in that constitution if they have done proper consultation to touch without touching the fundamental sections and clause and bring it back. I had a conversation with one of the leading experts in transitional justice and constitutional building in Africa. His name is Harvard. He lives in South Africa. He has in fact been very interested in our TJ process. Last year when I went to The Hague, when we had a conversation about the constitution, there is a simple clause or simple thing in that constitution that they could have touched and bring it back and make it look like it has not been brought back in its form. Moneka preamble. If you read the 1997 preamble, you read the 2020 draft preamble, it's the same. And then for us, my analysis was the preamble of the 2020 draft should tell us where we came from, Why do we in fact need a constitution? What happens to the past constitution and what this constitution is supposed to take us to? Bring it back. Without touching the controversial clauses. If their interest was the constitution have to come back, touch. Understand? We came and they said the constitution have been built. Who built the constitution? President Barrow, Dawda Jallow, bought coffee, sat at State House, and butcher our constitution to their taste. And you call that the people's constitution? And you call that a transitional constitution after the 1997 constitution have been butchered according to history 53 times? The 2024 draft, the 2020 draft have been butchered more than 100 times to meet the 2024. How do we accept that? The contention. And we come back to day before yesterday. You see, I had a position, and my position was very simple. We want the people's constitution. And the people's constitution by legitimacy is the 2020 draft. Because the 2020 draft is where Saibo was consulted, the Imam in Bansang was consulted, the Alcalo in Fonyi was consulted, and then the diaspora in Berlin, in Florence, or in America was consulted. That's the people's constitution, regardless of the bots in the constitution. But the 2020 draft, in Mahdi's voice, is a Barrow paper that Barrow brought forward to tell Gambians that you gave me a mandate to represent you. And then the mandate is beyond your voice, but it's about my taste and what I want. And then they gave us the 2024 draft. And when the 2024 draft came out, people made very, very controversial statements, and then we made recommendations, and then we went on social media, we went everywhere, and we talk about it. If truly President Barrow sits for the interest of the Gambian people, he could have called for a negotiation table. He should have come back. When we said there were no consultations, if Adama Barrow really respect the pride of Gambians, we could have dragged back to the period we had, the grace period. I call it the grace period, from the first reading to now. Adama Barrow or the President Barrow and his cabinet, Dawda Jallow, could have come back to the people and said, okay, we did this out of our clear consent to have a path of a new constitution. But you had your bots, let's do this. They did not do that. Now, people that are taking excuse of, okay, we made a mistake to say the 2020 draft will not pass, we should have allowed the 2024 to pass. When those who are advocating that today we have the 2024 draft go to the next stage or the committee stage or the third reading, we are the same people that refuses to listen to that the same logic to have the 2020 draft pass to the next reading, to the next stage, so that we negotiate the controversies. And today those people want us to pass the 2024 draft. When I was at the parliament, I had a stand. I had a very nice discussion with Honorable. My stand was throw the Barrow papers to the bin. But just now, we had a conversation. When I went to the parliament, I sat and said, Honorable, don't you think we can all think like them and we should not act like them? Let's have it passed. But within a second of a calculation as well, and knowing how dangerous the state is and how manipulative for the past 8 years, this current government is, especially if you come to building laws and the kind of laws they put in place, it was going to be a monumental mistake to have that negotiation to say, let's pass it to the next stage. Because at the committee stage, it's simple majority. But back to the primaries, if everything is done to the final stage again, we even go back to the 2/3 majority, that is the 44 NAMs. But now, these 44 NAMs, this can happen. Human beings, we have seen how politicians don't believe in anything in this country, where politicians flip-flop with their positions every day. Let's say now we all agree that, okay, now that we are tired, we need a constitution, nyaka pehe, do pehe, or that's how you say it, right? Let's have a constitution. And we go to the communist stage, and they touch everything, and they have it their way. And then there is a training in China, there is a meeting in the United States, and then half of the parliamentarians that are not in line with the 2024 draft are sent to China, are sent to America, and then they go and have an easy pass. Who shall be blamed? So these are the thinkings we have.
But the majority leader, Jonathan Kado?
No, I cannot trust the majority leader, because the majority leader voted against the 2020 draft. on the same premises that he disagree with the clauses. So today, if we agree and somebody else disagree and you think we should trust him, you see, there is issue of trust. Mohammed, I will tell you this and I'll end there and then I'll come back again, that one of the most controversial issues globally is constitutional building. I'm telling you, in advanced countries, we have seen what happened in Tunisia. This is exactly the scenario of what happened in Tunisia. When Tunisia built their constitution, the executive sat, I don't know how they call their state house, whether it's state house or blue house, and then turned the constitution to his wish and aspirations, what he wants as a president. And today the Tunisian people regretted, in fact, going through a constitutional building process, because what have changed and what have been kept is the same of where it returned them back. In 2005, in Kenya, they had a constitutional crisis, and it was nearly going to turn like this. Constitutional crises are normal in constitutional building processes, but crisis management is where the issue lies. Right. Because a problem if we said, okay, we made a mistake of throwing the 2020 draft out, we should accept the 2024. Can more 2024 draft be? Who was consulted to say that the president can nominate and now can fire? But who said that integrity clause be supposed to be there or not? Who said that? In fact, even the clause on free education for higher education, for secondary education, is an issue for me. In the 21st century, 2025, in this country, we have seen a scandal where ministers are bribed 600,000 per month, but they are telling us they cannot fund secondary education for free. They remove it in the constitution. They are telling us that the president can hire and fire as his wish, like State House is Barrow Kunda or Kamara Kunda or Jaji Kunda. That is not acceptable. And then I have stand in and with the names that kicked out that Barrow papers, and let's go back to the drawing board. We have an opportunity. We only need to remove politicians out of our business, and then we set a precedent that will give us a path to build a constitution.